Today we're going to talk about Vanagon AC systems. We're going to talk about both the regular Vanagon system and the system found on the Vanagon camper.
In today's program, we want to cover component location, system diagnosis, and servicing. But first, let's take a look at a vehicle that has a customer complaint of warm air blowing out through the AC vents. Mark, why don't you talk about that?
Okay. The first thing that we should do is make sure that the AC compressor clutch is working. Now with the ignition switched on, we'll want to turn the system on here at the evaporator temperature control knob. Now turn the knob fully, and we should hear the AC compressor clutch click on and the radiator fan run on first speed. Now if we don't hear that, the first thing we should check are the fuses down here at the fuse relay panel.
Now if that fuse is okay, take a look at the fuse strip up here at the D pillar. That fuse strip supplies power to the AC relay for the compressor clutch and the first speed of the radiator fan.
Now if all the fuses are okay, we'll want to hook up our AC manifold gauges and check the system pressure. Now before you do this, make sure you have yourself a set of safety glasses.
And you should also note that on 87 model Vanagons, as a running change, the high side service port was moved from the compressor to the D pillar.
Now before you hook up your gauges to the high and low pressure service ports, make sure both gauge valves are closed. Now on a camper, we'll need to remove this panel here inside the cabinet to gain access to the high pressure service port. Also, we'll want to put a rag over the service port whenever we're connecting or disconnecting the gauges to make sure that we don't spill any AC oil or Freon on the interior.
If system pressure drops below 2 bar, or about 29 psi, the low pressure switch will open, and this will shut off current to the AC compressor clutch. If the low pressure switch is open, we'll have to look for a leak in the system. Let's start at the receiver dryer.
Check the safety plug at the top of the receiver dryer to see that it's not blown out. If it's missing, this could be an indication that the radiator fan is inoperative and that system pressure is getting too high. Now another possible cause for excessive system pressure is a collapsed noise damper in the high pressure line at the AC compressor. Make sure this damper is removed and discarded whenever you're servicing the system. Now if the plug is in the receiver dryer, check the fittings and make sure that they're not loose and leaking. Sometimes if they're leaking, you'll see an oily residue left behind by the refrigerant oil. The next thing we need to check are these fittings at the condenser. We want to check and make sure that they're tight and not leaking.
Finally, let's take a look at the evaporator assembly.
Well, it appears that our problem was here at the expansion valve. Our low pressure line here was loose. Now I've tightened it, so I think we can evacuate the system and see if it holds a vacuum.
Well, before we reassemble the evaporator housing, let's take a look at some of the other components that we have back here. Over on the D pillar, here's the AC thermostat, ambient temperature switch, and here are the evaporator fans. Also on the D pillar, you can see the fuses for the evaporator fans, one for each fan, the high pressure switch, and the AC relay, evaporator relay, and the AC compressor clutch relay. Now all we have to do is recharge the system and make sure everything's operational.
But before we reassemble the system here, we want to check this evaporator drain tray to make sure that it's draining properly. If it's not, these blower fans here could pick up the water and discharge it out through the AC vents. Now we want to check and make sure that the drain tray is not warped or tilted towards the back, and that the drain holes are clear. Now if the tray is warped or tilted, we'll want to replace it with a new one. And when we do that, we want to make sure we remove any parts ID labels. Water will dislodge them and they'll float out here and plug the drain holes.
Also make sure that the valves are on the end of the drain hoses. If those valves are missing, that can also cause a drainage problem. And make sure that they're free and open and that there's no dirt or wax that could cause them to clog up.
Now in reinstalling these drain hoses, make sure that they're routed properly and not kinked. Now if a kink does occur, splice the hose with an elbow in the area where the kink is. Now another thing that can cause water to back up in this evaporator drain tray is the location of the holes here in the body where the drain hoses exit.
Make sure that the holes in the body are not higher than the exits for the evaporator tray. If they are, you'll have to modify them. Use a hole saw or a drill to modify the holes, but make sure it has a stop on it so that you don't damage the external body skin. And when you're done, touch up the area to prevent corrosion. So, the things to remember are: verify the complaint. If the system is discharged or the safety plug is blown, check the noise damper in the high pressure line and radiator fan operation. Make sure that the evaporator drains are clear. Check that the correct drain valves are installed and that they're clean. And make sure that the drain tubes are lower than the evaporator drain tray and that the hoses aren't kinked.
Well, that's all for today's program. We hope this helps you.